Hey, everybody, welcome to The Blacklist, the show where we interview the elite. Today we have Tanner, and I'm super excited because I knew this guy, I think, even before he was like a seven-figure entrepreneur. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done like over 50 million in sales. I knew you, I knew of you, right? When you were back doing like, six figures essentially,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
you just blew up, dude.
Uh-huh.
So take me, before we kind of dive in, I really want to know what was probably the biggest thing that took you from that six to seven figures almost immediately? Because after you hit seven, I think it was super easy to continue
Super
to hit.
fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, the biggest thing was I just couldn't figure ads out. And so I had been hiring a bunch of
I
coaches,
remember.
been doing
Yeah,
we've been doing organic messaging. I was making some money, but I was really struggling to scale. And so, the typical funnel at that time is, you click the ad, you go to an opt-in page, you watch a video, you book a call.
yeah.
I was getting no success. And I was getting really frustrated. So finally, this is right when I don't know if you remember when ManyChat came out. But
Yep,
that feature came
yep.
out where you could start, doing DMs and running ads to Messenger. And I got really frustrated. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to message all these people because I had this big fight with my coach at the time. And I made like 18, 20 something grand in a day. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah,
And I remember saying, I was like, oh shit, like I figured it out.
yeah.
And then I literally did that and we got as high as 2 million a month, just literally
How quickly?
man, less than 2 years. It took me 22 months. So from the second I started making money till we hit as high as 2 million, it was about 22 months. It was insane. And
Yeah,
so it just was no one was doing it at the time. So obviously, as marketers, like once someone does something that works,
yeah,
people start coming in. So it doesn't become as effective down the road. But even to this day, we're still doing the same thing and it's super effective. And I just think because it's high touch.
yeah. No, that's powerful. So I know we dove in right away, but for the people that don't know you, like who is Tanner and how did you start off?
Yeah, so I'm one of 7 kids. I was raised LDS, or more commonly known as Mormon. Very conservative household.
Yeah,
Dad is kind of the equivalent of a preacher, I guess
yeah,
you could say. Um, he was a teacher. Mom was stay at home, and so growing up, I was kind of sheltered, so to speak, and I got made fun of a lot because I was the oldest boy, and my sisters did not help me out. We did dress up and tea party. I have some pictures you should never see. And I was really into football. So,
yeah,
if you go check out some of my older pictures or someone Googles me, I was, got very into sports. That's kind of how I started building confidence and got away from the bullying.
yeah,
Took that really serious until I was about 22. And then that's when kind of football ended. I had a ton of injuries. I don't think I was good enough to go pro. And that was the first time I was like, man, I don't think I want to be an engineer. Because when you're in school and you're playing football, it's one thing. But when it ends, I was like, man, this is not going to be fun. So
yeah.
I met a mentor named David Fry. He actually is married to Russell Brunson's cousin. All
Oh
about the
wow.
ClickFunnels were, yeah, like what's the chances, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I feel guilty to this day, but the story was I wasn't going to church, and my parents are very religious, so he said, hey, look, I'll show you how to build an online business if you decide to go to church. And I didn't hold up my end of the bargain. I feel terrible. We're still very good friends to this day. He's like a second father to me.
Yeah.
But he taught me about, funnels and email opt-ins and sales and all these things. It was all low ticket and I didn't have any success. And I think it was because it was low ticket. I couldn't spend money on ads and I was making sales, but it's so slow.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
$500 a month, what's that going to do?
Right.
And then right before I was about to quit, I was doing door-to-door sales. I was, working as a part-time server. I was just trying to figure this thing out. I went and saw an ad, probably like people see my ads now.
Yep.
And it was like how to build an online fitness business. I was like, okay, whatever. So I go through, I buy it, made a bunch of money in the first week, like $10,000. And then I went all in. And then, less than 2 years later,
Whose ad was that?
yeah. So it was actually Sterling Griffin. I don't
Dude, he
know.
was my first mentor, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So he's actually out of the game now. He's
Yeah.
completely out of the game. And it's ironic. Like it's not like the course when I went through it. It was like, oh my gosh, like I'm missing these things. It was just that it was so simplistic that I didn't believe it. It was like, yeah, so raise your price, message people, call them. And I'm like, there's no way this is gonna work. And it actually did work, and I couldn't believe it. And when I made 10K in that first week, that was triple what I made in a month.
Yeah.
Like triple. Just completely changed my life. And then I just kind of took it from there. So that's kind of like the short version. I could go
Yeah.
into more detail, but
No, that's
kinda,
good. That's
yeah.
good. One thing that I agree with you on, and you posted this before, is the fact that you're really big on cold DMs. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people hate cold
Yeah.
DMs and they give it a lot of shit.
Everyone
but I
hates
think,
cold DMs.
yeah, but I think it's because they don't know how to utilize it like you do, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people that are starting out, that's probably one of the first things that you should do. But obviously I want to ask you, like cold
Yeah.
DMs, do they work? Do they not
Yeah,
work?
they do. I mean, 100%. They're not efficient. That's why people don't like them and they talk bad about them, because the average individual and, normal humans, we're lazy, right?
Yeah.
And so when someone's like, well, hey, you need to do this and it's not highly efficient, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, the average human doesn't want to do it. I think of it as door-to-door sales. I did door-to-door sales. It works, but super inefficient.
Right.
But when you don't have funds and you only have time and effort and energy, that's the only thing I know to do if you can't spend a single dollar. Now, you start giving me some money, oh, there's a lot of stuff we can do, all
Yeah.
kinds of tactics. But for the average person, I think they also underestimate how much volume. So for like our clients, or like when I start, I'll say, hey, if you do 100 DMs, you might get 20, 30 responses max. If you book 5 calls, you're doing good. So that's a
Yeah.
5% book rate. That's not a lot. That's
Eh,
very low. So
yeah.
people underestimate how much they have to do. So they send 10 messages and say it doesn't work, or they're not good at it. And, people will say, well, of course I'm good at it. I mean, guys think they're all good at asking girls out too, but we're not, right? And so
Yeah.
I just think a lot of it is people, they either don't know that their skill's very low, or they underestimate how much volume they have to do.
Yeah, I agree 100% with the volume thing. There's people that they'll send out a few messages, and all of a sudden it's like, dude, nobody's responding to me, or they told me to, fuck off or something like that. It's like,
Mhm.
well, you do realize that's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
You got to continue.
And to their point, I mean, it's changing, right? So social, when I started about
Yeah.
5 years ago, a lot less spam, a lot more
For
messages
sure.
seem to get through. I think a lot more filters are in now, so stuff goes in message requests, but it still goes to the same point. What else are you going to do? You
Yeah.
don't have money. You need to start your business. So I just think, again, people will say, I'll do anything it takes, but they don't really want to do anything it takes. If you could sit at home and message people, I promise you that beats door-to-door sales 10 out of 10 times. Not even close.
Yeah, no, 100%. When do you think, when people are doing, cold DMs, when should they, reanalyze or figure out like, hey, this is not working. I've sent out enough messages,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So to me, like that should be the metrics you look for. So like I said earlier, if you're doing 100 messages and you can't book about 5 calls, you're saying the wrong things.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that you need to fix your process. Once you get that working, the benefit, and once you have some money coming in, you can go to ads. And I'm a big proponent of ads simply because you only really have 2 ways to scale a company, right? It's either a super amazing idea, maybe 3 ways, a super amazing idea, right? And I would say in digital marketing, 9 times out of 10, you're not doing something that no one else is doing, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be competition. So then you're left with, you build a massive brand, which to me takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
You even look at like the Paul brothers now. I'm super impressed now. It's like insane to watch them, but they started on Vine just doing, funny stuff as kids. They weren't really trying to monetize. So it took time.
Yeah.
Or 3, you do paid ads, and that's the quick way. So I only tell individuals, hey, do cold, right? Until you start making money, then do ads, and then your team can take over those operations for you. But I mean, that's the only way I funded my business, because my parents definitely were not going to fund it.
Yeah.
So I had to do it on my own.
Yeah, 100%. How much should somebody start out with when they're testing for ads?
Yeah, so I started out $100 a day. I did $3,000 a month,
Yeah.
$100 a day. I feel if you can't get that to work, more ad spend is not going to make it work. All it does is it gives you a faster feedback loop. So if you're spending $100 a day and then you up it to 200 or 300 or 400, all you're going to do is get a faster feedback loop. So if you wanted to see if what you're doing is going to work in a week, maybe you would spend
Yeah.
300-400 a day. But otherwise, like 3,000 usually to me is a good budget, because it gives you enough volume that you're getting leads, but it also allows you to take your time with the process. You're not overwhelmed. It's not crushing your systems. And then once that worked, I just kept going up and up and up and up. And, it's crazy, but I thought $100 a day was a lot. And then we got to where we were spending $10,000-$15,000 a day. It was wild.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
about 100 a day.
Well, walk me through that process of, like, for example, because I've spent on ads before
Yeah.
when it didn't work,
Sure.
and essentially I didn't know that, hey, you need to have a sales process, you need to have an email sequence. Like, ads is just an enhancement of what you currently got.
Right.
So walk us through that, because somebody's listening to this and they're like, all right, I'm going to start spending on ads,
Yeah.
but they don't have a sales process, so they don't know where people are falling off,
Yeah.
and they're just spending money.
Well, especially, one of my portfolio companies is an agency, and people will go to ads thinking that's going to fix the problem.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not making sales. I'm going to run ads and I'm going to make a bunch of sales. That's not the case.
Yeah.
For us, the biggest thing we found is, yes, you can have emails. Yes, you can do retargeting, but it was that messaging process. And I think for anyone listening, part of that depends on the sophistication of the buyer. So I look at a guy like you have been sold to a lot, so you know what's happening. So the more sophisticated someone is, I feel that process has to be even better and more high touch point. I feel the less sophisticated the buyer is. So one of my offers in my portfolio companies is a sales rep, right? They don't get sold to a lot. They basically sign up with no, personal DMs. And so I think that's where you have to kind of decide on your offer and what you want to do. But for us, the more personal touch we did, the better it was because our buyers, usually I work with business owners, they're a little more sophisticated.
Yeah.
So.
High touch, you mean like sales calls and stuff like that?
High touch meaning like usually DMs. I mean, for us,
Do you guys don't do, or no, you guys do sales calls though, right?
yeah, we do sales calls, but like for us, what I found is like the more sophisticated the buyer, typically, not always, but if they go straight to a webinar, they've seen they're just like, oh, another webinar. So for us, what really changed the game was when we started running ads to the DM, then they would watch the webinar. If they sign up, great. But if they don't, me or my team will go in and we'll set the call. And that changed everything because, emails, everyone does that, right? Sales calls, everyone does that. Webinars, everyone does that. And so I think where you can get unfair advantages is scaling stuff that other people struggle to scale.
Yeah.
And so if you're running $10,000, $15,000 a day of ads and you're messaging every single lead, I promise you, very few companies can scale that because it's just too much volume. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages a day. So let's say you have 10 to 15, messages between that person. You're doing 10, 15,000. I mean, it's insane amount of volume. So
Yeah.
that's what I found.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's super smart, dude. So how many, from one team member that's managing a lot of the responses, how many people are they messaging per day? Like what's their cap, right?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, I don't know what the cap is, but we have, a pretty large team. I call them messengers. Most people call them setters.
Yeah.
But it's on the clock all day. So we have like about a 30-minute overlap. So, when someone's hopping off, someone else can hop on. We'll have as many as, 2 people in the inbox at the same time. So one person is responding, one person is like starting.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty rigorous process. And that's probably what I actually give most of my presentations on is like people want to see the SOPs and how that works.
Yep.
But man, a cap, I wish I could give you an actual answer, but it's just as many as they can do. With ads, what does make it easier though, is because they're coming to you, it automatically opens up. And so they can go right to and say, hey, what's your goal?
Yeah.
Cold DMs, there's a limit, right? Because you're going to get spam
100%.
and it's just also, you have to build up. You can't go straight into a sell. So I'm not sure the actual answer, but I mean, in a month we are doing, tens of thousands of messages for sure.
Yeah.
For
No,
sure.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then, so which ones are the ones that you handle yourself, or do you not handle any of them?
I do. So it's tough. I mean, I'll be honest. Like I'll go sometimes to the gym and they're like, dude, Tanner, what's up? We were talking yesterday. And I'm like, hey dude, I'm being honest. I don't think that was me,
Wasn't me, yeah.
But my team will do their best. Like if it's someone I know, or if I see something, I'll move it into my general inbox. On Instagram, they have, the primary in general. So I will try to move it to general, but otherwise, like a lot of times I don't get in there because one, I just think it gets to the point where when you're trying to build businesses and companies, there's just so many people messaging you or so many times, like you could be in there all day.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I finally just have a shut off switch. I let my team try to handle those leads. And then if it's someone, more sophisticated, if it's like you, for example, they kind of know and they're like, hey, this guy is like needing you, they'll leave it unread. And so sometimes people think I leave them on red, but what's actually happening is my team opens it, they push it back, and then I go in later when I have time. Yeah.
Dude, crazy. So, for people that don't know, like, what are you doing currently right now? Because you said, you have a few portfolio companies.
Yeah.
What does that look like? You're doing a lot of acquisitions now?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I have my main company's Elite CEOs. I've had that for 5 years, and we're actually in the process of, removing me as the face, putting in a new CEO. I think
Nice.
that's a valuable skill for me to learn and do. It's doing a lot of revenue. It's super profitable, but, I think it's time, and that's going to give me time to do other stuff. I do have a few portfolio companies. I think it just kind of happened because, we have so many business owners who come to us. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm breeding my own clients, and the best clients, right? The best of the best. We're like, hey, do you want to partner? And it makes sense because I've seen their work ethic. I know their margins, their profitability. So we have taken on a few. And at that point, basically, they just get unlimited access to me and they get some higher level stuff from my team. We'll do some things for them. We'll hire, we'll do some training.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to be my big thing. Hermosi's really doing that right now. And I believe, it's going to work. He's a beast and so is Layla. But I think it's very hard what they're doing and it's slow because when you go in a company and you're having to change management and do hiring, it's not this overnight switch.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually in the process of kind of figuring out my next thing. I don't know if you've seen some of my posts, but I'm having all these conversations with kind of what you're doing. It's cool.
Yeah.
But I'm having all these high level conversations with, billionaires, multimillionaires, and I'm just getting their perspective because, I don't get to talk to people doing that amount of money very often. And so I'm actually in the process of that. So by the end of December, my hope is I've stepped out completely.
Yeah.
I'll still be involved, like advising, but I'm not going to be like, doing the day to day. And then I'll take maybe a month or two to kind of just step back and think because all the advice they've told me said, hey, do not jump right into something else. Make sure you wait. Like even if it's 60 days, wait.
Yeah.
So you can read and kind of just assess and sit there because they're like, probably your issue and why you can't come up with your next idea is you're working all the time. And they're like, your best ideas will come to you when you're not. So that's kind of a high overview, but we do have a couple portfolios, but I don't think I'm going to go nuts and, just like get 10, 20, 30. We got like 5 right now.
Yeah.
So.
In the 60-day period that you're going to think, is there anything that you're like, you kind of have your mind on? Like there's a few things like, hey, I might go here.
Yeah. So I really love tech, but I'm also at the same time a little scared of tech. Some of my high level friends, they're like, hey dude, it could be a home run. It couldn't.
Yeah.
Alex Becker, I really loved what he's done with Hyros. That's been cool. I also have thought about, doing some type of like, consumer product. I talked to a guy named Scott Cohen. This was an amazing conversation. So this is the only other thing I've really thought of. So I really like tech.
Yeah.
Because even now, go high level, right? You're familiar with the CRM.
Yeah.
We started using that as a white label version to our clients. I think in 6 months we're doing $80,000 of profit.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's like, how much work is it really? It's like none. And there's like basically no cost. So that's why I've liked tech and I think I want to go that route. But if I don't, the only other thing I think would be like something like, direct to consumer. And Scott Cohen was really cool call because this guy was actually internet marketer, had an agency, was doing SEO.
Okay.
And Invisalign, I didn't know this, but Invisalign came out and he looked at the whole process. Like, man, this sucks. And I was like, their funnel sucks, their process sucks, the customer reviews are terrible. So he basically just came out with his own version. It was a little cheaper. It was $2,000.
Yeah.
And he built it and sold it for $1 billion in under 2 years.
Wait, you posted about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he sold it for $1 billion under 2 years. And I'm like,
damn.
And that's like, that's us, right? He's in digital marketing.
Yeah.
He was a digital marketer. He said, hey, I was going to go second or third to market. He just took the process and made it better. And long story short, he said they were paying $1,200 a customer. I was getting it for $400. We had a better process. I had a sales team in the US. They were using Costa Rica, nothing wrong with that. But he just was like, I took every little thing they did and made it better. And he basically won. And if you go look at their reviews, it's insane because, even like Google, they have like, you'll see 1-star reviews. Oh, Google sucks, this and that.
Right.
But he had amazing reviews. And so that guy's really intrigued me. So once I get through kind of my first initial calls, I'm going to have some follow-ups and hopefully go from there. And then one of them actually went well too. Her name's Kim Perrell. She sold, I can't remember the number, but it was 100 or 200 million.
Yeah.
And the call went so well, she's actually invited me to like go to lunch. She's like, hey, we could work together. So I have no idea how that's going to go. I have very low expectations.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not going to be what I think it is, but I'm very open-minded at this point because I just want to grow.
Yeah.
And the money is it's kind of irrelevant at this point. It's like once you can kind of buy everything you need, it's just you're fighting over a bigger home, bigger house, bigger car. It's kind of irrelevant, I feel like.
Then why do you want to grow?
Dude, I wish I could tell you. I'm just so growth driven. I don't know why, but I feel like if I'm not constantly improving or growing, I just feel very stagnant and unhappy. I love building stuff. Even like now looking at my business where we have all these pieces in place and I'm barely doing anything and we just have such a solid team. It just feels rewarding.
Yeah.
And so I just think I'm always going to be that way because if I take more than 3 to 4 days off, I start getting very bored. I've been in Vegas for a week and I'm like, I'm ready to go back, right? Like I've kind of been like hanging out and doing stuff and I've been working a little bit, but once I get out of my environment for 3 or 4 days, I kind of feel like I'm not doing anything. And that's not to say other people can't do it. I love growth, man.
Yeah.
So
well, it's crazy because I interview a lot of people and they're like, they'll say like, once they kind of reach that level of success, they're like, it's not about the money,
Yeah.
And I'm like, then dude, then why the hell are you working still?
Yeah.
They'll say, it's not about the money, and then I'm like, what's your goal? Well, I want to have $1 billion company.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like,
yeah. And it does sound funny when you put it that way because you really don't need it.
Yeah.
But I just don't. I mean, I don't know what else I would do. You know, I have a few things I enjoy. I have a couple hobbies, but I find it so rewarding to grow. And I think someone put it best. I heard this quote where, you know, they talk about the richest people on earth and what traits do they have. And it always comes down to they have this deep, you know, insecurity and fear that they're not good enough, but they also have the confidence that, or like they're crazy enough to think like, hey, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me because as a kid, got bullied a lot, super insecure. I think to this day, that's part of what drove me is I started to find confidence and status because when someone made fun of me, I said, oh, but I have more money than you. Oh,
Yep.
my girlfriend's cuter than yours. Like I have a better car than you. And it sounds silly, but when people are putting you down, it's like you're looking for anything to kind of pull yourself up. So that was for me. And then when I see people do better than me, a lot of people get jealous or like you'll see on social people, you know, they're talking shit and all those things. If I see people doing cool stuff, I just have the thought like, oh, I could do that. Like, what do they know that I don't know? And it's never from a place of like jealousy or, you know, oh my gosh, this he got lucky. He's got a trust fund. I just feel this like kind of desire, like, hey, I want to do that too, or I want to be great. And so it's almost like I'll feel left behind if I see people making moves and I'm not. I'm just like, man, what am I doing? Like, I need to grow. I need to like perform. I need to be the best I can be. So
Did that thought come after you had the money, or even before when you were?
I think definitely after. So there was. So, you know, Alex, like I bring him up a lot of podcasts. I feel bad sometimes because like I feel like
Everybody does.
but he was a very good friend to me when I was going through a tough time and he didn't really know it. And it was right when I hit my first $1 million month. And I remember the moment. I was in a, you know, one of the nicest buildings in Miami. It's like 25, you know, no, what is it? $6 million penthouse. I had a half a million dollar Lamborghini, and you know, I was crushing it, and I was dating a bunch of girls and all this stuff. And I just remember sitting there and I was like, man, like, is this it? Like this is what I wanted. And it just felt so empty and I felt so unfulfilled. And I think I was just running away from being broke so hard that when I finally hit that goal, that was my number. I was like, I'm going to hit $1 million a month. Like, I don't know why that was the number, but I was just like, I'm going to hit that number.
Yeah.
And when I hit that number, I just remember like it was fun for a day and then I just wasn't anymore. And that's when I started really thinking about life in general. And I think, you know, Alex, you know, with gym launch and stuff, he was going through those things and he kind of did it before me. And he's close to me in age, you know. I'd always had older guys talk to me. I was like, you're old.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. And so he started giving me a lot of advice on how to think about life. And that really helped me because when I did get there, I was, you know, I got pretty depressed. And I don't know if it was depression. Sometimes I say that, but I was sad.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because you go after things and you think you're going to get this like momentous, like life-changing moment or you're going to feel different. You don't. And I think now I'm smart enough to know that. So it really is about the growth because if you try to build $1 billion company and you think you're going to feel different when you get there, you won't. And no one cares. And that was a good thing for me to realize too, is I thought people gave a shit. But in reality, no one really cares. Like, you know, if you build a huge company, I'll be like, yeah, cool, dude. And then it's like, I move on to the next thing of my day. And you're like, and it's crazy because when I was there, I used to think, man, like, that's it. Like, you don't even care. I'm doing $1 million a month. Like, I'm a badass, right?
Yeah.
And people, you know, they're just busy with their own lives. So it really happened after the money. And I went through kind of like, I would say a dark time, but I really matured through that to understand that I really do enjoy business. And I think that's important because if you don't enjoy the game, you're not going to grow $1 billion company because it's too hard. There's just too many things that happen. But when I looked back, I was like, man, I think I really do enjoy this. Like, I love the grind. I love when things get tough. I love when things go wrong. You know, not actually love it, but like, it's like that adversity. Yeah, it's that adversity and it's building. So, yeah, sorry it's a long answer, but
No,
you know,
dude,
a lot
that's
to
good.
say.
You know, if you're open to it, I'd like to dive into a little bit more about, you know, when you were in depression. Like,
Sure.
I think I read a post where you were very open about that, right?
Yeah, very, very dark. And I don't get very deep very often because it's like, I think growing up, me and my family, we just weren't that close. And I don't think it was on purpose. We just didn't hug a lot. You know, I was raised in a Mormon household. So, you know, a lot of stuff is taboo and you can't really tell your parents sometimes because you're not supposed to be doing it. And so, yeah, I was actually in Puerto Rico at the time. I just moved there to try to evade, you know, taxes. And, my girlfriend at the time and me were breaking up and, you know, me and her just were very close. And, when we broke up, I kind of just felt like I didn't really have anything to live for. And the reason was because I made all this money. It was kind of what I told you. The money didn't matter. And then I felt like a person who's very close to me didn't want anything to do with me. And so, yeah, I mean, I literally flew back to Texas. I went to a gun store there, got a gun, and I was going to do it. And I think I didn't. The only reason I didn't is because I started thinking about all the people who count on me. Two of my brothers work for me, and in hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good experience, and Alex actually helped me a lot through that. He didn't know I was going through that at the time, but I think he really helped me give me that perspective, because when you do reach kind of the top and you realize there's nothing there, it can be somewhat depressing, because you do have the thought like, well, what does it matter then? And then when something kind of monumental bad happens, like to me, that breakup, we've been dating for 4 years, it just felt kind of like the end of the world at the moment. Obviously it wasn't, but I got a little overwhelmed. And so yeah, I don't talk about it much. I did make one post, but I think like what's interesting now on the other side is I'm actually giving a talk next week. It's literally about mental health. And the irony is, my perspective has changed a little bit on depression. And what I mean by that is, when we say we're depressed, or at least when I did, I think sometimes we say it, and what we actually mean is we're deeply sad, right? Something bad had just happened in my life, and I said I was depressed, but I think reality is like I was just very sad. And a helpful thought that someone gave me, this may not be for everyone, and so I say this with utmost respect of anyone who's gone through depression, but the best thing that ever came to me that someone said is, dude, I just don't believe depression is real. And what they meant by that is they're not saying that it's real or not, but they said if you don't believe in it, then you can't be affected by it. And that was actually probably the most powerful thing for me, because I'm very logical. And so I've tried to change my perspective now, is when bad things happen or I get very sad, instead of going to a super dark place that that would have been terrible for my family and my loved ones. And that's just never the right route. I just pretend like, hey, I don't believe in it. So therefore, if I don't believe in it, it's not happening. I'm just sad. And that may not work for everyone. I totally get that. But for me, that was actually one of the most helpful pieces of advice, because I would go to therapists or I would go to therapy, and I'm not saying it's not helpful, but for me, I just felt, man, I don't know if I'm getting anything out of this. Like, they're asking me questions. I don't know the answer. I came to you to give me the answer. And so that advice, at least for me, has been more helpful, because now when I get in a bad spot, I'm just like, you know what? Depression isn't real. Whether it is or not, I'm just like, depression is not real. I'm sad. This moment will pass, and I just move forward. And that is a little more helpful for me than kind of trying to, why do I feel this way, or what do I need to do to fix it? And, to each their own, 100%. I try to be super respectful of everyone's view, but yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell. I don't talk about very much, but I'm glad you asked. So hopefully it'll help somebody.
Yeah. Well, I want to dive in a little bit more.
Sure.
So, okay. When you were in that state, though, you were not in a very logical state, right?
No, I mean, it's purely emotion.
Yeah.
Purely emotional.
Because, you're saying like, yeah, that helped you out a lot, and you're right. I'm a very logical guy too, so like totally understand.
Yeah.
I get it. But there was a moment in your life when you didn't get it, and it wasn't logical for you.
Yeah, like it's like I didn't care. You just feel like I don't give a shit. I mean, that's how I feel. I was like, I don't give a shit about anything right now.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's deep.
Does that make sense? Like
it does. It does. Well, to me, what the crazy part is, because and I'm just trying to understand, because I've never gone through something like that.
No, 100%.
It's you're right now, we're fully aware, right? Fully aware. Yeah. And in that time frame, it's like, what changed? Because you're still fully aware. I feel like, like, I mean, unless you're not.
You are. Like I've gone through. I don't know. Again, like the funny thing and where I get interested is like, do you think the way because something someone said, or do you think that way because you were born here, or do you, there's so many factors that go into why we think the way we do. All I can tell you from that time is I had, my girlfriend at the time. I mean, we're actually back together. I mean, we've been together for 4 years, and so she's been like my best friend, and. I'm not sure why, but I don't think I'm very close to very many people. And it's probably my fault. I mean, honestly, it probably is my fault because I'm working all the time, and then people will ask me to
You
do
don't
stuff.
actually DM them; it's your team.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah. Like there's probably things I could do better,
Yeah,
but I was kind of going through that epiphany that like, hey, nothing really matters. So I already kind of felt like it started to, well, my work doesn't matter, and
yeah,
like if this person closes, it doesn't matter. And I even had the thought with all the clients I've helped, I'm like, so what? Like, so what? It's a blip, right? Like
yeah,
I'm looking at Mark Zuckerberg. I'm like one of the most successful guys on earth, and he's gonna get forgotten. He's a blip. So like, what does that make me? And it was kind of like a dark spiral.
damn,
And then so we were going through a rough patch. We had some disagreements, and she decided to split. And so I think it was just all that compounded. I'm like, nothing matters. I don't have anyone anymore. Like the closest person to me, I felt like had abandoned me.
yeah.
Obviously it wasn't the case, but that's how I felt. And so I think you are aware what's happening,
You just don't
but your
care.
just level of give a fuck is just so low. Like you just don't give a fuck. And I don't know if you've ever had those days, but even like, in your business, you might just have like all these fires and you're like, yo, bro, I don't fuck it. Like I'm gonna just throw my phone here. I'm going to bed.
Yeah,
And so I don't know why I got that dark with it, but I think everyone has to kind of confront that and kind of figure out what is the meaning of life, or does there have to be a meaning, or whatever purpose you need. Because if not, I think eventually at some point you're going to face it, especially with success.
yeah,
Because you realize with success, like no matter how much success you have, it's never going to change anything. Like to a degree, like people ultimately don't care that much. Like if they love you, my parents love me, they don't care how much I make. They
yeah,
don't care. They just want me to be happy. Other people, like, they want you to do well, but they don't care. And, ultimately, even if they did, it doesn't matter, right? It's like other people praising you or saying you're top, hot shit doesn't matter, right? So I don't know. I think it was just a lot. It was just a lot of the time, and we could probably do like 3 podcasts just on this topic.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, hopefully it sheds like a little light, and that's just my perspective, and hopefully it helps because I know I don't try to think or act like I know everything. I just try to share my perspective and what I felt at the time, and hopefully it helps someone. But the most helpful thought for me is after I got through that was when someone just said, "Hey, dude, like you're not depressed. You went through something sad. It's not real, and it's gonna pass." And that's like the thought I try to hold on to if I ever go in a dark place, because depression is like when you feel like you're not gonna get out of it, and that's what I felt at the time. Was like my girlfriend left me, you know, nothing matters. I'm in, Puerto Rico. It's not nothing against Puerto Rico, but it's not Miami. I'm just like having a rough time, man.
yeah,
And when you feel like you don't have anyone to turn to or talk to who's gonna understand, that's hard. And I think that's the second part is as you become more successful. I don't know if you felt this, but I feel like I relate to less people, and not in a bad way, but it's different when someone who's doing 100 million or a billion or they've had this, financial success gives you advice because you feel deep down like they get it.
yeah.
Right. And that's probably something I need to work on. But sometimes when someone gives me advice, if they're not coming from the same place I am, I'm like, you don't get it.
Dude, 100%. Even when you asked that one post about having kids and stuff like that, right? It's like, yeah, I've definitely noticed that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I don't try to judge anyone. I know everyone's got different perspective, but that's why also, when I was going through that time, I got connected with Alex. He reached out to me, and that's why I think it was so pivotal because he is killing it. He is crushing it. And I overall, I view him as a good dude, and
yeah.
he's got good values, and, so that helped me a lot during that time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, powerful. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more because you're right. A lot of people when they hit that level, they might hit they might say like, man, what the fuck? Like, is this it? And that's kind of what you hit. Obviously, you hit it a lot deeper because you were going through some shit. But
Yeah.
you're now on the other side. I don't know what you believe
Yeah.
in it for like the meaning of life is or whatever. But I
Yeah.
mean, did
It's like, it's a whole thing. So, so growing up Mormon and, like LDS, obviously they believe in Jesus Christ, God. Um, and most of what it is it's, you're saved by works, right? And so you have
yeah,
2 types of religion, one saved by grace, saved by works. And a lot of that is, saved by works. So you need to do this, you need to do that, etc. And so, growing up, and I love my parents to death. Like I love them to death, and because they're so passionate about what they believe in, I can't even fault them. Like they believe what they believe so deeply that it's actually inspiring.
yeah,
Even if you're like an atheist, you're like, wow, these people literally are so convicted in what they believe. But obviously, growing up when that's part of the discussion with like religion is like, do you believe what you believe because your parents said that or where you're born, or do you believe it? And I've always asked myself that question, right? If I was born in Nigeria, would I believe that?
Yeah.
Most of the time, the answer you come to is no. So then it starts asking other questions. So, um, for me, when I got there, I started going to massive amounts of therapy, trying to figure out what was the meaning of life. And I mean, every day, like I was going to all kinds of therapy, paying tens of thousands of dollars. And again, I don't know if this will be helpful for people. Sometimes that's why I'm a little bit more closed off, because I don't want to say anything that's going to like be detrimental to someone. But
Yeah.
I got to the point where I kind of realized there's obviously no logical way, like fact based, where everyone's going to agree, okay, because of this, this, and this is what the meaning of life is, right? Even if you're religious, like there's not much you can say like to prove it. There's maybe some things, oh, the Bible was here, or like, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, but someone's still going to disagree. Or they're going to say, oh, I don't believe that's bullshit. So again, like this may sound bad, but I guess like I take more of the nihilist approach, where I stop trying to figure out what everything means. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know if there's a meaning to life or not, but like, it's okay if there isn't. And for most people, they don't really roll that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a helpful thought for me, because instead of always, people will get so wrapped up in, well, that triggers you because of this event when you were 5, and this triggers you because at 15, and that triggers you because your dad was a preacher, and this, and I'm just like, instead of worrying about it, I'm just like, okay, I feel this way. I don't know why. Let me just accept the feeling, and then I move on.
Yeah.
And I just find that it's more productive for me, because when you sit and wonder why you feel or think the way you do, it's like, one, is it productive? 2, you can maybe feel shameful. It's like, well, is it really your fault you feel that way? I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff. And so that's been my approach. I don't know if I'll stay that way. I will be fully transparent. The way I thought when I was 20, 25, now I'm 30 is completely different. And so when I'm 35, I may come back to this conversation and be like, oh man, that was such a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
But that's been the most helpful thing for me at the time, because I just feel like otherwise you just go down this rabbit hole and it never ends.
Yep.
And that was frustrating for me, because when I was having problems with my girlfriend or I was depressed, I was kind of looking for these answers of like, well, why do I feel this way? And like, does this do this? And does that do that? And instead, when I finally kind of was like, hey, there may or may not be a meaning to life, but no matter what, it's like, if it doesn't matter, or, if nothing does matter, then just do what you want to do and be the best person you can be, and like, just go from there. And that's been more helpful for me, for better or worse, but that's been my approach. So
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
yeah.
So I'm gonna take a complete like wide turn and ask you about something else. But I wanted to ask you about hiring, because I
Sure.
see a lot of your posts about hiring.
Sure.
And I think, people get triggered when you post hiring.
Oh yeah.
Posts.
Oh, they get real mad.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Are you the one that are you the one that's actually hiring most of the time?
Yeah. So in my portfolios, and I like it. And the reason I like it is you get to a certain point in business where you realize that the more you do, the less you make. My number one goal is to not work. And the
Yeah.
reason is, when people hear that, like, wait, what do you mean? Unless I do a brand new startup, once a business gets to a certain level of revenue, the more you make, the more you work, the less you will make, period. And the reason for that is because, 1, the business is dependent on you for doing something. 2, even if you do the activity 24 hours a day, there's a cap, right?
Yeah.
So if I took 24 hours of sales calls a day, there's still a cap. There's still an amount, like I cannot take any more sales calls. So in terms of hiring, what I've learned and what I'm trying to do in my portfolios is like, I'm assembling my teams. And so I'm not running the company, but I assemble the CEO, the COO, the CMO, all the team members. And I know what to look for now. And so when I started my business in the beginning, you're just trying to feel relief. So I'm just throwing,
Yeah.
get in here, do this, do that. No SOPs. My poor brothers. I mean, we talk about this day. He's actually moving into CEO. I didn't help him at all. And I didn't realize how bad a job I was doing. But yeah, with the hiring now, I like to do it because I know what traits to look for. I actually used to think company values and character traits were such bullshit. People would say, I'm like, dude, that's such bullshit.
They say the same thing with culture.
Yeah, the culture. I was
yeah.
like, oh, that's such bullshit. Like, oh, I was like, that's bullshit. But it's not. And the reason is because if they do not embody the company values, they will be the detriment to the team. And so, like for us, the ones we have now is we have integrity, right? Competitive greatness and proactivity. And the competitive greatness and proactivity is everything, because if they come in the business and they only want to do 8 hours a day, or they only want to clock in and clock out, that's cool. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what most jobs do. It's not a fit for us because we can't have that. We're trying to get to high levels. And so I've realized that if you don't hire properly, what you're doing is you're lowering the company's standards to the person, but what you need to do is raise the person to the company's standards. And a lot of people feel uncomfortable doing that. I'm not sure why, but I'm just a very blunt person. And so I think that's why I was able to have more success, because a lot of people, they don't like having those uncomfortable conversations. I don't care. And to be quite frank, you see Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, two of the most successful guys ever. Most people think they're dicks. They think they're assholes. Sorry, I don't know if I said that on air. But they think they're jerks, but I think it's because they just have this level and they say, if you can't hit it, you can't be here. And a lot of people look, oh, he's not empathetic. But I think you're only as good as your weakest link. And so I think a lot of people, they allow weakness inside their company and they don't try to get rid of it, and it doesn't work. And you'll see you'll see other entrepreneurs in our space who crush it. Like they just have unrelenting, determination not to allow that in their companies, and their hiring is on point. And so, yeah, when I do the hiring post, I know some people get upset, but I'm like, it's not in alignment with what I want. You're looking for work-life balance, which is great for you. You should go find that. But the company is not looking for that. We're looking to drive. And you, like the 8 to 5, typically 9 to 5, it's not enough, especially for high-level execs. My execs do not work 8 hours.
Yeah.
They don't. And they can't. If they did, they wouldn't be an exec. Like, I'm not going to pay that amount of money because there's too much competition. That's what people don't ask. They go, well, this guy or that guy. I'm like, cool, but could I find another guy who will work twice as hard as you for the same pay? This isn't $2,000 a month. We're talking $30,000 a month. Yeah, I could. So that's my stance on it. It might be unpopular, but it just has worked. And I made a post as well that the biggest 5 competitors we had 5 years ago, one's left. Everyone else is gone.
Crazy.
And so I'm like, what? Why is that? It's the team. It has to be the team. It's all about the team. It's not about you. So
yeah. And how do you determine like your org chart? Like how do you, you're scaling, whatever. Like how do you know what person you need to put in next?
I mean, I just think you look for the biggest efficiency in the business. So for me, I just like whatever is the bottleneck, and then we find someone for that position. So for example, like recently, again, I hate bringing up the same people, but I actually won't say their names, but I've seen personal branding become so important. And a couple years ago, I was like, man, we like on Clubhouse, people were like personal branding. I was like, man, you're broke. I was like, this guy's talking about personal brand. He's broke. Right. But I think there's two sides to it. So I think in the beginning phase, this will get to the point. I think in the beginning phase, personal branding doesn't matter until you have money. Cause like, if you don't have money, like what are you branding? Like you can't, right? Like even with the amount of content you're putting out now, we were talking about before the show, you got to pay a ton of money. Yeah. But once you get to a high level of money, then it's like branding is what's going to take you far. Like, and so I think you got to put more time into it. So to your point, you were asking, hey, well, how do you know who to hire? Now that I realize branding is more important, I was like, yo, my organic content sucks. Like I'm just shooting stuff. I have no direction. Half the time I look bored because I don't even like what I'm talking about, And so I realized like, what is my best content and what does the best? It was actually podcasts. And so I love being on podcasts because it's back and forth. Yeah. You're talking about stuff I enjoy. And so I actually just hired an executive creative director who used to do some work for Patrick David Bett and did some work for another guy named Matt Supulos, who's his number 2. Yeah. And immediately, 48 hours in, it took 900 applications and 3 months to find this guy. Damn. It sucked. But immediately when he comes in, he's like, yo, you need to do this, 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 and this. We're changing this in your content. We're doing this. We're doing that. And I'm like, dude. Yeah. It's just the difference when finding the right person. It's just night and day. And then I think you just look for a deficiency. So for me, where I'm at in my companies now, the biggest thing I can do to help my companies and get to the next level is start building a personal brand outside of maybe starting a new company, right? Because I could start a new company, but you're seeing with like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, you saw with the Jenners, Kardashians, you're even seeing with Alex right now. It's cool to see. Like, I feel like we're seeing Alex in lifetime. Like you're seeing like someone go from zero to like, he's going to have millions and millions of followers. Yeah. And so I'm like, you know what? In 10 years from now, if I don't start now, I don't know how successful I'll be, but it doesn't matter. If I don't start now in 10 years, you're going to be way behind. So I'm like, hey, you better get on the boat now because in 10 years with the advancement of technology and social media, everyone's going to have like a little video guy following them around. Everybody. Yep. I don't know if you feel that way, but I just feel like people at this point, if you don't get on the ship now, you're gonna get left behind. It's like now or never. So
No, yesterday I had a guy on, fuck, and I'm blanking on his name.
yeah.
But he's hosting the Real Estate Domination Conference.
Yeah,
where he has
yeah,
Ty
yeah.
Lopez and all that type of stuff.
Is it Cody?
No, no, not Cody.
Shoot.
It's his name is.
I saw it yesterday, but I'm trying to.
Oh, his name is Jerome. Okay, so he
Yeah,
he has
cool.
his
Yeah.
event here.
Yeah.
And he's saying like, yeah, dude, once you have like the money, like the biggest thing that I'm doing right now is just strictly focusing on my personal brand because, you know, like you're seeing a lot of these people. They're like Ty, right? Ty went into e-com and purchasing major brands.
And the push of a button, it's like that's all they need for lead gen. They don't like you don't even have to run ads. And so I think the mistake, the one thing I don't like that Gary Vee says, the only thing, because I like him overall.
Yeah.
He seems like a super nice dude, super cool. He's always like, yeah, post this, post that, this and that. I'm like, dude, if you're a solopreneur and you're broke, you don't need to spend all your time posting it. I think it's the last thing you should do. But to what you just said, once you have money in the bank and you have a team, I think becoming a brand and a personality that people like is everything, because then they want to buy everything. They want to be associated to you. And that's why you've seen like what the Paul brothers, right?
Crushing
No
it,
hate
dude.
on them. No hate on them. What's the difference between them and someone else right now? Besides maybe their good look, I don't know. But you get the point, is like their brand. So he starts what did Logan Paul start? That Prime drink.
Yep.
What is it? Is it valued like $1 billion already?
No idea.
It can't be just because of their business skill. They may be great businessmen, but the difference is they have so much pull. The Jenners, right? They're both starting their tequila brands, blew up. And I saw that, and I remember I saw that, and then I saw Alex talk about it, right? And then I'm like, you know what? That's where I've missed. Like I've missed because I didn't take it seriously. And so now I'm having to go back and hire 10 editors. We just hired an executive creative director. I'm gonna have a video guy follow me around everywhere. Start literally right after this. And
Nice.
so I think that's like what you have to do, because everyone else is playing that game. So if you decide not to, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And like even Mr. Beast, last guy I'll say, 24 years old, got a $1.4 billion offer.
Crazy.
And I don't think he's running the businesses. I don't think he knows what's going on. Maybe he does, but all I know is he's got a way bigger brand than me. And so it doesn't really matter, because he puts out a video and gets millions of views, and they'll buy whatever he has. And it's impressive. It's no hate at all. It's just, hey, you're beating me at the game, and this is what I have to do to kind of level up. So
Yeah. Dude, powerful. Well, where can people find you?
yeah, Instagram or YouTube. YouTube would be the best, guys, just because I'm trying to grow that thing. But yeah, so Instagram or YouTube, Tanner Chidester, that's probably the best place.
All right, dude. Well, I appreciate being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off. I appreciate it.